Hi guys, Miss Castro back again, covering Units 7 through 8. Unit 7 is Global Conflict, Unit 8 is Cold War and Decolonization. Both of our units cover the time period from 1900 to the present. Let's start with the big picture and the main themes. Big things that we're going to cover in these two units. We're going to see challenges to existing states. So we're going to see empires fall, like the Ottomans, the Russians, and we're going to see new political experiments emerge, like communism. We're also going to see this wave of decolonization where our European and non-European powers are going to let go of their colonies. And we're going to see the formation of newly independent states. We're also going to see a period of economic instability. That's the Great Depression during the 1930s. And we're going to see not one, but two world wars, World War I and World War II, the sequel. We're also going to see, of course, new technologies emerge that are going to change communication, like the radio. They're going to change transportation. Things like the airplane and cars will be regularly used. The assembly line is going to change industry, and we're also going to see new and more efficient ways to farm, changing agriculture. We're also going to see lots of technologies that make war more deadly, like machine guns, poison gas, and nuclear weapons, like the atomic bomb, which is directly going to lead to all of these mass atrocities that are going to happen during this time period. So we're going to see genocide, war crimes, bombing of civilians happen. And also need to remember that the Cold War is that competition for superiority between the US and the Soviet Union. That's also a big thing in these two units. So the first event that we're going to see is going to be caused by these main causes. Militarism, remember that's competition between our European powers to have the best military, the best weapons, the best army. Alliances, so we're going to see lots of secret alliances as well as not so secret between European powers. It's going to create this tangled web of connections within Europe. We're also going to see imperialism be a cause of this event. That competition for colonies is going to want to make Europeans go to war with each other because the loser of the war loses their colonies. So we're going to see some colonies that are up for grabs. And then finally, nationalism is also going to cause Europeans to want to go to war with each other. This feeling that my country is better than everyone else's country, nationalism, that's going to cause World War I. These are the main causes. This is going to last from 1914 to 1919. Don't need to know the specifics of the war, but we do need to know the consequences. So World War I is going to lead to the collapse of empires like the Russian, the Ottomans, the Austro-Hungarians, and the German Empire. They're gone. And we're going to see the formation of new states like the Soviet Union, Turkey, Poland, the Weimar Republic. These are just examples, not the whole list. So after World War I ends with the Treaty of Versailles, important vocab term, we're going to have this interwar period that is basically a time period between the two world wars. It is the 1920s to the 1930s. That's the time period that we're talking about. Main event that we have going on here is the Great Depression. People lose their jobs, people lose their money, people are poor, they're starving, we have inflation. It's really bad times all around. We are also going to see lots of nationalist movements, especially in Vietnam with Ho Chi Minh. He wants to get rid of that French presence there. We're going to see Pan-Arabism, where we have people in the Middle East rally around a common Arab identity, where they want to form a united Arab state instead of these separate Arab countries that we have in the Middle East, like Jordan, Syria, and what was the other one? Iraq, all of those countries. Instead of having those being separate, we want to do like one big Arab state. This is just a movement, it doesn't happen. We're also going to see Zionism kind of come up to light again, where we see Jews basically being mistreated for all of world history. They're like, guys, we need a Jewish state, a state just for Jews so that we can be safe. People are like, I guess, but they're not really enthusiastic about it. India also, we're going to see movements for decolonization. So the Indians, having fought for the British in World War One, they're like, where's my independence? I want to rule myself. The British aren't going to give it to them. And then the Chinese Civil War, we have the nationalists led by Chiang Kai-shek but go to war against the communists led by Mao Zedong, and they are basically at war with each other. Another big event going on is the rise of fascism and military governments. So in Italy, remember, we have Benito Mussolini taking power. In Germany, we have Hitler, as this is one of his propaganda posters. And then in Japan, we don't have a specific leader, but we do have Japan continuing their imperialism. And they imperialize so hard that they want to go after China. And this is what's going to basically cause World War II in the Pacific. So we have World War II happens, we have our allied powers, which is Britain, France, Soviet Union, USA, and China against the Axis powers, Germany, Italy, Japan. Lots of explosions, lots of battles happen, lots of things happen, and the allied powers end up winning because, that's the side that we're on. We're going to win. You don't need to know the specifics of the war, like battles and stuff like that. We need to know causes and consequences, so focus on those. So let's look at the consequences of World War II. If you see in this graph, you see there's lots of death. So many people died during this war. We also see new technology being invented, most notably our nuclear weapons, our atomic bombs. Remember, we use them against Japan. We're also going to see the division of countries like Germany and Korea, the destruction of Europe. So Europe is like just done. And Europe is not going to be the most powerful region anymore. We're going to see two countries become the most powerful ones after World War II. Then we're also going to see the occupation of Japan by the US, the creation of new states like Israel and the Koreas, the creation of the United Nations, which is this international organization that's basically created to solve world problems without having to go to war. Because of all of this, we are also going to see lots of mass atrocities like the Holocaust and firebombing. And then finally, probably the most important consequence of World War II is the Cold War. Remember, Cold War, US versus Soviet Union. Let's talk about the Cold War. So Cold War is basically, it's not a direct war between our two powers, the Soviet Union and the United States. It's more like a competition for superiority and world domination. So we have our both countries that are kind of they have different reasons for wanting to take over the world. So they have different political ideologies. The US believes in democracy, which is people elect their leaders, and then the Soviet Union believes in authoritarianism, which is a one-party rule, it's a one-party state. They have different economic ideologies. This is like the main difference between them. The US believes in capitalism, where the property is privately owned, and Soviet Union believes in communism, where property is publicly owned, in other words, owned by the government. They have different goals. So right after World War II, we have the US wanting to hold free democratic elections in Eastern Europe, but the Soviet Union wants domination of Eastern Europe to serve as a buffer zone between Soviet Union and our non-communist states. Then they also had different fears after the war. The US was afraid of the spread of communism, and then the Soviet Union was afraid of US military superiority. So because of this, we're going to see them compete for dominance. So they're going to start to develop bigger, badder, deadlier weapons. They're going to do the space race, which is mentioned in your book. And they're going to compete to have countries either become communist or free and democratic. So one of the big things about the Cold War was the arms race, where we have the US and the Soviet Union compete to create bigger, deadlier, basically better weapons. And a lot of these were nuclear weapons seen here, but they never actually used them for fear mutually assured destruction. So they reasoned that if let's say you're the United States and you use the hydrogen bomb, the Soviet Union could retaliate with a hydrogen bomb of their own. So that feeling of mutually assured destruction basically stopped them from using these nuclear weapons that they developed. And instead, they fought with more conventional means of weapons like guns and drones and stuff like that. So as a result of the Cold War, we do have the spread of communism. It's inevitable. It's spread. first spread to China by the help of Mao Zedong, then North Korea by Kim Il Sung, Vietnam, that was Ho Chi Minh, and then the Cambodia, it was thanks to the Khmer Rouge, which they did commit a genocide. So not good. But communism did spread to all of these different countries, even more, but these are the main ones that we mentioned. We're also going to see the formation of different alliances, which is one of the reasons that we got into the World War I in the first place. But you know what? They love repeating history. So they formed alliances. Our non-communist countries formed an alliance within themselves. And as a response, the communist countries formed their own alliance. And this can be seen with NATO and the Warsaw Pact. We're also going to see lots of proxy wars because of the Cold War, where the US and the Soviet Union don't fight themselves directly, but they fight themselves through other countries. So this can be seen in the Korean War, Vietnam War, the Cuban Missile Crisis, where we almost broke out into nuclear war, and then the Contra War in Nicaragua. As a result of us building lots of nuclear weapons, we're going to see a movement against nuclear weapons. This is the anti-nuclear weapons movement, where people started to see that having all of these weapons of mass destruction is not a good idea because it has a lot of negative effects. First of all, you need to test those things, and wherever you test them, you spread a bunch of radiation that causes, among other things, cancer. It also negatively affects the environment, and we're living in constant fear of being annihilated by a nuclear weapon. That's not something we want to do. That's not a good way to spend your life. So these are the reasons why we have this anti-nuclear weapons movement. Another big event of the time period is decolonization, that movement where imperial powers are going to start to let go of their colonial possessions, either peacefully, maybe through an agreement, or violently, maybe through a war. This happened in India and Pakistan, where the British decided to give up India, but we have that conflict between the Muslims and the Hindus in India that's going to cause the formation of Pakistan as its own separate Muslim state. Bangladesh is also going to become its own state that was part of India. And then in Algeria, the French did not want to let go of Algeria as their colony, and this is going to erupt into a war. That's the Algerian War for Independence. Vietnam, we also see an example of war as a result of decolonization, and this causes the Vietnam War. We get involved, that's Nixon right there, and because Vietnam was trying to swing communist, but we didn't want that. Cambodia also is going to turn communist as well, so they're going to kind of follow the lead of Vietnam. In Egypt, we see that Egypt did get independence in 1922 from the British, but the British still have lots of control over there, and the Egyptians were just trying to, get them to let go of that control. This can be seen with the Suez Crisis, where the British and the French tried to kind of take control of the Suez Canal, because the Suez Canal is a very important canal. But in the end, Egypt did maintain control of that canal. We're also going to see the formation of newly independent states. The most important one was Israel. So after World War II, in 1948, we're going to see the establishment of Israel as its own state for Jewish people. And this is very important because after the Holocaust and all of those horrible things happened, it made people realize that maybe Jews do need their own safe haven. The problem was that the land where Israel was founded was already inhabited. It's not like they had just like a blank piece of land that they could just give to the Jews. We have Palestinians living in that land, and that is going to cause territorial conflicts. That's going to cause lots of wars to happen between Israel and the Palestinians that continue on to this day. So that's mentioned in your book. I encourage you to do more research. Look at the news to see what's happening. It's still happening today. We're also going to see migration to metropoles like London, and this is a specific consequence of decolonization and imperialism. So we're going to see basically people from the colonized countries migrate to big urban areas of the imperial countries. So we're going to see Indians go to London, Algerians migrate to Paris, people from Angola migrate to Lisbon in Portugal. So that's another thing that happened. Another big thing that we see is resistance to power structures. So this can be exemplified by these three examples right here. We have Mahatma Gandhi in India, and he is against British colonial rule in India. We have Martin Luther King Jr. from the US, and he is against racism and segregation in the US. And then we have Nelson Mandela um, against apartheid in South Africa. So all of these people are good examples of non-violent resistance to our power structures. This unit ends with the end of the Cold War officially in 1991, but unofficially kind of around 1989 with the fall of the Berlin Wall. This kind of starts like a domino effect of all of our communist countries, especially in Eastern Europe, falling in on themselves without, because the Soviet Union was falling apart, and without support from the Soviet Union, all of these other Eastern European countries that are also communist are going to not want to be communist anymore because they no longer receive that support. So after the U.S. falls apart, not the U.S., the USSR falls apart, the U.S. claims victory in the Cold War, but we still see the effects of the Cold War today. You can see that with our icy relationship with Russia. And yeah, that's it.